Hello all, Harmless Canadian here, and today I want to take a somewhat belated look at the Not E3 Summer Showcases. Having watched all those showcases and had a little time to think about them, I have 6 takeaways I didn't expect to have when we hit this showcase season, and 6 takeaways I didn't even necessarily have after watching the showcases for the first time. Before we get to all the takeaways though, I want to start with an observation that impacts almost everything I thought about these showcases. And that is that there are a ton of games coming. A ton of games. So many games. On every platform, for every genre, for every budget, there are just so many games coming that appear to be of a very strong quality. My final takeaway takes a little bit more deliberate look at this phenomenon, but the first is actually a look at a very special subset of all of these games. My first takeaway is that almost 7 years after this generation was first announced with the official mention of the PS5, and about 5 years after the next-gen consoles launched in November of 2020, it feels like quote-unquote next-gen is here. We can get all technical about the fact that this is in fact the current gen and not next-gen, but it's felt more than ever that what was promised, that next-gen, was still coming, still on its way, always just over the next hill or around the next corner. There are several practical reasons for this: diminishing returns on hardware, longer dev cycles meaning current games were envisioned years before, and also those long cycles meaning developers have fewer iterations to improve on the tech. And then we also just have the cross-gen period which went far longer than planned due to pandemic-based production restraints. We did have some genuinely beautiful games such as Demon's Souls Remake, Alan Wake 2, Black Myth Wukong, God of War Ragnarok, Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, Forza Horizon 5, Gran Turismo 7, and last but not least, Horizon Forbidden West, but even at their absolute best, it felt like something was missing. This showcase season capped off a year where it felt like the wait for next gen was over. In the past year, we've seen in-game footage of GTA 6, which looks absurd, but to me, just as impressive was Kojima Studios' work in the Decima engine in Death Stranding 2. It easily surpasses the original, but manages to improve on what we saw in Horizon Forbidden West as well, and provide perhaps what was the first really next-gen looking game on a large scale. Other games came close. Crimson Desert can look astonishing at times, a little lackluster in others, and games like Ghost of Yotei and Assassin's Creed Shadows have their next-gen moments, but likewise are not consistent. Forza Horizon 6, mind you, also manages to improve on the already impressive 5th title, and perhaps was the perfect lead-in to the showcases, giving us a sign of what was to come. The 2026 showcase season coincided with the announcement or near release of titles that got started just before or just after the current gen arrived. Almost everything else we've been playing or that we're seeing was either started well before or was impacted by the cross-gen nature, and most of those games are out now. Across all the showcases, we saw some very impressive looking games, and what follows is by no means comprehensive. But if these games had been around earlier in the generation, the sentiment that this generation has been just more of last gen but a little better, or that it's never really arrived at all, would likely be quite different. Some of these games look like the current gen finally arrived. Others look borderline like what I was expecting from the next gen in a few years. But either way, it's a good feeling to see such beautiful games when it felt like there was something missing in the first few years of the generation. My second takeaway is that Xbox, Phil Spencer's Xbox, got some things very wrong, but that he did finally seem to have that genuinely awesome looking Xbox lineup on the way. That lineup that we always felt was coming was finally coming. It was probably just a little bit too late. We need a new mainline Halo to convince me fully, but Campaign Evolved looks stunning and faithful. State of Decay 3 looks like everything the earlier games felt they could be, and more, frankly. Senua looks like a real game instead of a gorgeous tech demo. Gears of War is back, baby, and for the first time since the original on Xbox 360, gives me that feeling like it can't possibly look this good and be this cool all at once. And I'm leaving perhaps the best for last, because hot off what is possibly the best and most beautiful racing game we've seen in years, with Forza Horizon 6, Fable looks to be like a real Game of the Year contender. It's gorgeous, stupid gorgeous, as we've covered, but the systems reflect a depth we've been waiting for, and the trailer this June gave us a darker tone and a compelling villain that make it look like Xbox finally has a game to go head-to-head with a Sony first-party title. And it just might, because we may see God of War Laufey and Intergalactic the Heretic Prophet next year along with Fable. And while I wouldn't be ready to call a winner, especially as we don't know quite enough about combat for me, for once I feel like Xbox's contender isn't just a dark horse, but is right there in the thick of it. The third takeaway is that Sony's big games this June highlight both a strong turn after the live service debacle, but also give a clear picture of what we've been missing. That isn't to say that I think Wolverine looks so much better than Spider-Man 2, or that God of War Laufey somehow shades Ragnarok, but I do feel like they've got a little extra something to them, and that both we and the studios have been waiting to see this generation. Seeing a couple big games like this, impressive games, feels rare since the initial PS5 showcases, and we haven't really seen potential launch timelines like this since the end of the PS4 generation. The live service push, the cancelled games, and the closed studios have made a huge dent in this generation for Sony. But maybe, just maybe, we're going to get the strong finish we deserve going into PS6. The next takeaway, and this might seem like an obvious one, is that GTA 6 really is as frightening to publishers and developers as people thought it would be. For a couple years now, everyone has been talking about games getting out of the way of Grand Theft Auto 6. The thing is, the date's been in flux, and I think that meant a waiting game for almost everyone. But this June, it was a bloodbath, now that it feels like the November date is 100% going to happen. Almost everyone got out of the way over the last few months, and they're willing to stuff in some very tight launch windows to do it. There are too many games coming out at the same time for them all to succeed. But they need to avoid GTA 6 because it could literally sell as much as all of them combined in the first few months. Look at the September through February launch schedule. Don't be fooled by the end of October or early December. These games are for the most part not in contention. The biggest games in the world got out of the way of GTA 6. This game is going to make or break so much in this industry, and it was going to make or break a whole bunch of games. So they didn't risk it. The fifth takeaway is less about the games themselves and more about the reception. In a world where we don't have time to play all these games, and where things generally just kind of suck, I feel like it's less that people are jaded and expect certain games, but rather they expect too much of the showcases themselves. They expect hype and excitement not only as a byproduct of game announcements or game showcases, but a separate product provided by the publishers. It sometimes feels like people are looking for a dopamine rush, some sort of boost through video game announcements to help cope with life. At some point, we need to look at ourselves and say, if I'm not excited by the list of games coming in a real way, part of this is on me. Not just that the showcase was dull or I didn't get to see enough of the games that I saw. It's one thing if you don't have faith the games will be good, or you see nothing but a logo for any of the games on the list. But this is starting to feel more like I just wasn't entertained or manipulated effectively enough in a way that triggers my hype response. There was a generally pretty low opinion of the Nintendo Direct this June, but take a quick look at this subset of what was shown. There could be hype for literally just this list. I do understand that leaks impact hype, and I get that we want to see gameplay, we want entertainment, and we like fast-paced, quick showcases. But Kingdom Hearts 4 was essentially re-announced here at this Direct. There was a Zelda Ocarina of Time remake with exactly the art style everyone wanted. Throw in a brand new Xenoblade, an epic set of Xenoblade remasters, a great look at an imminent Fire Emblem only months away, and a brand new 2D Final Fantasy, and just the thought of these games should provide more excitement than it feels like the entire showcase did. Like I said, at a certain point we have to consider our relationship with excitement, with hype announcements, and what actually matters when looking forward to video games. Lastly, there are a ton of games coming, maybe too many games. Games are being made, huge awesome games are being made, and we saw some genuinely impressive output at all levels over the last month. On the other hand, everything costs too much for everyone in this industry right now. People are losing their jobs in the industry at a record pace, and this has been a consistent theme for nearly half a decade. And yet, there are seemingly high-quality games, and more of them than ever before. I think we're probably at a tipping point despite what it looks like. This level of output is despite dire reports for half a decade, and to me, that means that either they're finally figuring it out, they're finally turning the ship, and things are just going to keep going, or we're just about to go over the precipice, and it's going to be a very, very slippery slope. Either the games industry is generally too big to fail, or it's about to fail harder than it ever has, and we'll likely know in a year or so which of those it will be. So, with that beacon of light, I do hope you enjoyed the video, and I've been your harmless Canadian.